Now, we've had a big speech from the Prime Minister this week flagging what's going to be huge changes to the IR schemes across the country if he has his way. Anika Wells, I'll start with you. Is this the time for everyone to put down their weapons, as the Prime Minister says?
Well, in the course of Australian political history, getting workers and bosses in the same room is hardly revolutionary, but I guess I will concede it is revolutionary for this government, who have been in power since 2013 and have done nothing but bash unions, threaten insecure workers, and then wonder why productivity and growth aren't going better. So I guess we welcome their late arrival in Damascus. We know that unions and workers are the eyes and ears of working people and that they have a lot to offer. And I guess we'll keep an open mind when it comes to negotiations moving forward.
Andrew Bragg, do you think that's fair? Is this the government finally realising what they should have done, or is this just responding to extraordinary times?
Well, Annalise, I think going to labour laws is the right place to go. I mean, we need to improve the competitive position of the country as we come out of the pandemic, and labour laws are a huge drag on our position as a country that needs to attract investment in order to create more employment. So I think looking at labour laws, looking at IR is the right way to go, yes.
What exactly needs to be looked at, though, Andrew?
Well, as I've said on this program many times before, I think the system of modern awards is very complicated. For example, I've been of the view that we should have a small business award to try and make it simple and easy to employ people. I think a lot of the problem in the industrial system is it's created for the insiders. It's not actually working particularly well for the workers.
Anika, do you agree?
Sorry, it's just a pleasure to hear the Liberal government talk about caring about workers. It is something that they will need to do more of in an environment where we already had insecure work on the rise and things like their $3 billion cuts to TAFE, meaning that there are 140,000 less apprentices out there than there should be at the moment. I'm glad that this is on the agenda now, but I think what we would all like to see, given the ideologues on the backbench, is the government commit to implementing whatever these working groups do come up with. That's what I'd like to see.
If we turn now to borders, Queensland's really in the crosshairs of what's become a bit of a stoush between the states and the federal government about keeping borders open. Pauline Hanson's thrown the gauntlet down with that 4 p.m. deadline. Anika Wells, do you think Queensland should reopen its borders?
No. You know my stance on this. Queensland is the best country in the world. It is the greatest nation on earth. I understand why you all want to come here. Like, we really do get that. But you can't, and there's good reasons for that. And the Premier's right when she says that ultimately the buck stops with her if there's a second outbreak. Now, we are doing this on a case-by-case basis. My office has helped people come to Queensland to reunite with their terminally ill father. My office has also helped people come to Queensland to install vital medical equipment. So these things are happening as needed. But really, this is just another example of where Scott Morrison and his government wants everybody else to fall in line, everybody else to not criticise and to act in a bipartisan manner, while they themselves act in a nakedly, outrageously partisan manner. They aren't making these criticisms of the Liberal South Australian Premier, who has very similar restrictions in place. They aren't making these criticisms of the Tasmanian Liberal Premier, who has very similar restrictions in place. They are making these criticisms of a Labor Premier who they want to knock off at an election in October. So let's just call a spade here.
Andrew, I've lived in all of those states and would happily go on holiday in any of them. Does Anika Wells have a point? Are we focusing on Queensland just because there's political gain to be had?
Well, I promise to give a shorter answer than that to start with. Look, I mean, National Cabinet hasn't had any advice about border closures. This is something for the state premiers to explain why they're doing. I mean, I represent the people of New South Wales, and we are, starting to relax restrictions. I went to the pub on Friday night. On Monday, we're going to 50 people in a pub, and so far, so good. We have a low level of community transmission, and we're here in Australia's global city. So it's really a matter for the Queensland Premier to explain herself.
So you don't think that we should be pushing Queensland to open? There's that economic cost of keeping the borders closed. All those tourism dollars just aren't being spent, and that's impacting a lot of small businesses as well as the broader industry.
Well, I mean, that's really a matter for Queensland and the Queensland government to explain why they're doing that. I mean, we have our borders are open in New South Wales, and we are opening up restrictions within this jurisdiction, and so far so good. So, but I'll leave that matter to the Queenslanders to work out.
And just finally, it is Reconciliation Week this week. We haven't heard much about it, given that there's so much happening in the world coronavirus related. But Anika Wells, would you like us to be doing a bit more to recognise Indigenous Australians this week?
Oh, absolutely, and shout out to my the Noongar group, the Noongar Reconciliation Group in Nunda, who will be looking after a ceremony for our local community in this coming week. You know, Labor has a long-standing, deeply abiding commitment to these principles. It's now been 3 years since Uluru from the Heart, and we would like to see more progress on this front. This week is an excellent opportunity for everyone to turn their minds to something that is very important, and for individuals and individual government members like Senator Bragg here to do what they can to push the cause forward.
Andrew Bragg, are you going to be pushing the cause forward for that accord, that voice to Parliament as well?
Well, I'm very pleased you've raised this, because I do think that we have made some progress. The first Indigenous Affairs Minister, who is Indigenous, Ken White, is leading a bipartisan development of a voices to Parliament, Indigenous voices, which is happening as we speak. And that group has continued to meet during the pandemic via Zoom. It's been co-chaired by Marshall Langton. And that is one of the elements of the Uluru Statement, which is currently under development. So the next stage is for that work to be publicly disclosed for consultation, and we'll look at the various models for voices to Parliament. So that is some progress that we can reflect upon this Reconciliation Week.